Matt Dendy, starting out in the local orchestra, bartending, shifting to performing at bars, to now so much work that he started a talent agency and a photo booth company with his wife. Such a great transition, such a great arc, such a great story. So yeah, man, it's really awesome to see.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you taking the time today to, answer my questions.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to come on.
And we are continuing the Well-Paid Musician Success Series. And I'm really excited today to have Matt Dendy. Matt joined the program in 2021. Well, we'll tell the story. We were catching up before the call. And since joining, Matt and we caught up on the phone last week because he wanted to give me an update about his business. And he's been doing some amazing stuff. And I'm really happy that he is taking the time to share with everyone today and on this recording. So, Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Tell us what you do.
So I'm a contemporary electric violinist, is what I've kind of come to just explain what I do to people that ask. I started playing violin when I was very young. I was 3 years old, and I played classical music my whole life. Went to college for music, USF in Tampa for my undergrad, University of Colorado in Boulder for my master's. Had a vision of being a performer in an orchestral setting. I'm from Florida. I live in Sarasota. That's where I grew up. Moved back. Once I moved back from college, I was with the local orchestras for 4 years. Local theater called the Oslo. It was great playing with highly trained individuals, but you just can't survive on that kind of income. If you're in a big city and you're lucky enough to get an audition at like a New York Philharmonic or something like that, that's a different story. But smaller orchestras, unfortunately, just don't pay great. And so I supplemented my income with working in restaurants as a server or a bartender, and it paid the bills. But the last job that I had was at a restaurant here in Sarasota out on Siesta Key that has live music every day. And over the few years that I worked there, I got to know all these local guys and gals that performed out there, and they got to know that I'm a musician, and they're like, why aren't you doing more with music? And I was like, well, I'm a classical violinist. Like, what am I supposed to? I was at the time maybe doing one or two weddings a year, never
Yeah.
really private parties. But it was just strictly classical music. And then I was actually doing real estate at the time, and I hated real estate, and I had some money set aside, like $1,500 to renew my real estate dues. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I don't like real estate. I'm going to buy some gear, a little cheap PA and a pickup for my violin, and I'm going to try to switch it up and try popular tunes on violin and see what people think. And I had no idea if anybody would like it, if they wouldn't like it. I know in the classical world, the idea of doing anything other than classical is kind of sacrilegious or frowned upon.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Lowbrow.
so, yeah, and I was kind of in that mindset too. Like, I don't know if people are going to have any appreciation for this or even care to hear. There's a place here in Sarasota called St. Armand's Circle, which is a big circle with shops and restaurants, and people, as long as you're not impeding foot traffic, you're allowed to go out there and busk. So over a period of 2 weeks, I went out there and set up, and it was a great way for me to just try out some new stuff without having the expectation of doing a gig. And anyway, people took videos, and within the couple weeks, somebody had sent a video to a local restaurant, and they contacted me. They're like, hey, we're going to start this brunch. We think you'd be a great fit for the brunch. And I was like, oh, we're doing like an hour or two. They're like, no, how about 3 hours? And I was like, how the heck am I going to come up with 3 hours worth of music? But put it together. So that was back in like 2017 ish, early 2017. And from there, it just kind of snowballed into trying out different types of music and finding what people like and they didn't like. And then it got to the point where I was doing enough restaurant gigs to leave my serving and bartending job and just survive solely on restaurant gigs. And it was great. 2020 was supposed to be my busiest year with restaurants. I think if I would have had everything work out the way it was supposed to, it would have been like 320 something gigs that year.
Whoa.
COVID put a wrench in that. And then when things started opening back up, I got back into so 2021 was close to 300 gigs as well. And that's when I joined the program. It was like your message of would you rather do half the amount of gigs for more money than burn yourself out. And I was like, this is exactly where I'm at, what I'm feeling. Um, so yeah, and then things have really evolved since doing the course and to where I am now. But yeah, like I said, so for what I do, I guess music
Yeah.
wise, like
Are you playing to tracks, to loops?
I'm
Like, what are you
played at
doing?
tracks. Yeah, when I first started, I was really intrigued with the live looping. There's different people that I had seen on YouTube, Brian Fitzy being one of them,
Yeah.
who's a member. One of my friends, one of the people that plays at the restaurant that I mentioned, who's still a good friend of mine. He does an amazing live looping set, and that really it was really inspiring to see that. I did that for quite a bit, and then COVID kind of pushed me to sell this all these little pieces of equipment that I didn't really know if I needed anymore. And so then after things started opening back up, just transitioned to pre-recorded tracks. I'm really picky with the tracks that I use. I'm not just finding any track anywhere. A lot of them I've recorded myself. I do play
Oh, cool.
piano as well, but
Cool.
yeah. So the tracks that I use, I try to have the highest quality track possible. Just to, it's not going to help if the track sounds like crap.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
everything from 60s rock to modern top 40s. I've done recently, I did a 100-year-old's birthday party. I've done bar mitzvahs before. So, really something for everyone. I think that's something that's helped me a lot with getting different types of events, is being able to cater to different clientele. I've done really high end. This past March, I did a really high end donor event for a local organization where the tickets were like $600 a piece to go to this event, and it was people that just wanted to be entertained while they're eating their expensive caviar. And
Yeah.
I've done pool parties, beach parties, and stuff like that. So it's a wide variety of stuff. It's a lot of fun. I'm always learning new music just to keep it fresh for myself and for people that hear
Nice.
me.
Awesome. So background is great because I think we all start that way, just kind of doing the bar thing, even having another job playing at night, and
Yeah,
then you're making more at night. So it makes sense to quit. But now you have to rely on the gigs
yeah.
and it's not enough. So maybe you teach during the day or you bartender, you do Uber or something else. So we've all been through that. Tell us where you are now.
So where I am now, so the course definitely shifted my whole focus on what's important in the career.
Yeah.
I still currently do, so this is why we chatted last week. I still am currently doing about 50% of my work in restaurant or hotel scenes. But the way I treat those gigs, we can get into that in a little bit, is
Yeah.
completely shifted.
Well, you
Basically,
could, yeah,
when I
talk
finished
about
the
it.
course, I was like so eager to get back out there and get back to work and doing gigs. But the restaurants that I do play at are ones that have high end clientele that come to them, or they're at a high end hotel where people are spending upwards of $500 a night to stay at it. So I know these people are the kind of clients that I want. These are the kind of ears that I want to have hear what I do, that lead to more events,
Mhm.
private events. I pulled up all my numbers for the year. So I finished March with exactly 60 gigs this year. 31 of them were private events, mix of weddings and private parties, and 29 of them were restaurants. But I keep track of all my wages, my tips, what I make at gigs, and I average everything out. So if I finish the month with, say, so like March, I finished the month with 23 gigs, 11 of them
Wow.
private events, 12 of them restaurants, but it was a average total for the month per gig was $832 per gig. So the restaurants aren't paying me my private event rate,
Right.
but a mix of the restaurant pay plus tips bring me over my minimum of $500. Like I even now, if I get a call for a private event on like a Tuesday at 11 a.m., not a penny less than $500. Normally, I'm going to shoot them my normal rate. If that's too much, then we
Yeah.
can negotiate. But it won't ever be less than that, even if it's a again, people all the being a violinist, I don't know what it is. People, I guess it's the perfect fit for an engagement, but people are like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
propose to my fiance on this Saturday night in October, and
Right.
we need you for 20 minutes on the beach at 7 p.m. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it's not gonna. I mean, I'm happy to do it. This is my rate, but
Exactly.
um,
That
stuff
is
like
something that I tell people starting out because you will see a ton of those type of leads.
Yeah.
And because people only want you for one or two songs, they don't think that $500 is like an appropriate
Justified.
rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I've gotten a couple that way, but yeah, you will see if if you want to do it for $300, you can definitely get people to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you're leaving your house, you shouldn't do that. You should
And
set a
the way I look at it is it's closing the door to opportunities that will
right.
happen.
It's opportunity cost because you
Yeah.
could get something paying you, you know, even if you could do both, it's just too much strain. And
Yeah. One thing that so my wife and I, not to go too off topic, after doing the well-paid musician, we started a photo booth rental company, which took off. We used everything that we learned from well-paid musician and applied it towards that, and it worked amazingly. But with that, we've gone to a lot of different conferences and heard speakers. And one thing that I still use this to this day, I can't remember who said it, but was to look at your calendar a year ahead and pick. You can actually just get a blank calendar and write A, B, and C or A plus dates. So you look at your calendar, you're like, okay, this is an A date, this is a B date, and this is an A plus date. Like, and those are dates that you're going to get booked. It's
hmm
October. Here in Florida, wedding season is really October through May. But all of those Saturdays are A plus dates. Fridays and
hmm
Sundays would be A dates. Everything else in the week, B and C dates. And then that way, when somebody reaches out and you're like, oh, I have that open. Oh, it's an A plus date, to price accordingly to it. And honestly, it's like at this point, where I'm at now. It's like if I don't book an A plus date that I think is going to book in October, well, then I've got a Saturday night off to enjoy
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
enjoy myself rather than just
Exactly.
filling it with a restaurant that I'm going to be miserable at and wish I was out with my wife and kids doing something more enjoyable. But
Yeah. And I love the way that you're classifying the dates like that because
yeah,
it's a little bit more tangible. It's a little bit more like easy to understand versus like $500 minimum. Um, it's
yeah,
based on the demand. And Saturdays, especially in your wedding season, like, no, you're going to probably book out for 1,000 or more. So like,
yeah.
if you have the night off, great.
Most likely not going to happen, but
That's fine,
there's yeah,
but that's what I love about, I mean, that just happened to me. Um, the clients, they're giving me the deposit today, but for this Saturday, and I was like, if I don't book it, fine. But my minimum fee is 1,500, and
yeah,
um, you know, I'll take the night off. It's fine
yeah.
because knowing that, like, not negotiating when like Saturdays are precious right now for where I live and or what I'm doing based on my past decade of experience. Like, yeah, it is all the Saturdays from April through like end of September. That is, and then again during Christmas time, like all of December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are
Um,
certain things too, like December, at least with the market that we're in down here. December is not a huge wedding month, or I do a few, but it's a huge corporate party of
yes.
month. And
Yes.
I've been being more diligent this year and planning. I've already reached out to some and already booked some people that booked me last year, but people in the corporate world like to wait for some reason till mid-November to reach out and try to
Yeah.
find their entertainment and are so surprised when people are already booked. And it's like, well, it's a very, very busy month. So a lot of those dates, like I'm this year, I did take a few restaurant gigs this past December. I don't think I did more than 2 or 3 of them. I had to cancel because of a private event coming in.
Right.
And we'll get into that later about my thoughts on cancellations and stuff like that with restaurants.
Well,
But
I was just going to ask you about the restaurant thing. So
yeah,
first, like how much of that is leading to private events? Second, what night of the week are you doing the restaurants? And
yeah.
then third, what is your policy about, subbing out and things like canceling?
Yeah, so the restaurants that I'm at currently, I do a steady gig on Monday nights. So I'll
Okay.
be
Yeah,
Monday night, there's nothing going on, but where it is, it's downtown Sarasota, right on the water at the main marina there, where there's multiple 100-foot yachts parked. There's people, it's right in the downtown scene where there's a lot of wealth in that area. Not saying that everybody that goes there is a wealthy client, but
sure.
there are a lot of them there. I've booked gigs on people's yachts for sunset cruises that have heard me there, but it's also a Monday night. and it's a 3 hour gig that pays $300 plus tips. And it's very rare to make less than $200 or $300 in tips there. It's a very busy place. There's probably 100 tables or more. It's come as you are, like seat yourself, and it's a great crowd. But it's led to so many private parties.
Yeah.
Like I can't even. It's hard to keep track of them. It's people that hear me there once a month or every other month, or even there's multiple people that come every week, and that's the way I look at it. And what I've done with restaurants is I've shifted my mindset to treating restaurants as a paid marketing opportunity. So rather than thinking of it and going into it as like, oh man, here's this 3 hour gig again, I can't wait for it to be over, treating it as a way to market. So I have a big banner. A lot of musicians have banners with like a QR code on it. So the QR code that I have is for a link tree that when you scan it, it goes to takes you to my YouTube, my Instagram, obviously a place to leave a gratuity if they want to, but more than like my performance calendar. And then on each of the tables, I've made these little table tents, and I put them out on the table. It's the same QR code. People scan it, and then the way I kind of I don't like to say bait and hook the people, but I let people know, hey, I take requests. If you scan that QR code on your
Right.
table,
No, that's
you
great.
full song list, and then you can request a song, and then that
Exactly.
way that gets there like, oh look, here's his bio, oh here's his
Yeah.
performance calendar, oh he's available for private events.
Yeah.
So the way it's a way for me. Yeah, I'm doing a gig at a restaurant, which for the most part the gigs I do have a good crowd, people that are into it, and but I'm getting paid to a lot of people rather than forking out hundreds of dollars a month to put a sign up on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid to go to this restaurant and
Well,
have
and
information out there for
the
people.
difference that is that you're not playing at TGI Fridays,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where people were like, okay, you want what for a private event? $500, well, mostly that you're not making $500 here, like that kind of
Yeah.
clientele, because I used to
Yeah.
do those kind of gigs. And
Yeah.
so, you know, yes, playing resort type events, like done plenty of casinos and beach stuff, and you have people coming from all over.
Yeah.
That's a different type of audience. So yes, and the
Sure.
fact that it's during the week, I think that's a
Yeah,
win-win.
so I do a Monday night at the marina, Wednesday nights at a high end resort out
Yeah.
on the beach, and then occasionally Thursday nights have become for me a very popular private event night. I don't
Oh
know,
yeah.
I'm guessing that corporate clients are having a hard time locking in venues, or the venues are charging more for weekends. So Thursday nights have been a really popular, at
Cool.
least this year. I've done quite a few private events on Thursdays, but when I'm not doing an event on Thursday, I'm at a place out on the island, a high end restaurant out there as well. And then these restaurants, like I don't have any sort of formal contract with them. All private events, 100% of them have contracts, unless it's somebody I've done. No, even people I've done multiple gigs for, I still have a contract. It's all electronic. It takes about 5 seconds for them to click it, sign it.
Mhm.
But that's just to cover my bases. But for the restaurants, there's no contracts, but we do have like a mutual agreement that
Perfect.
um, I won't cancel on them. Basically, what I tell them is I won't ever cancel on. Like my focus in my career is private events. I'm happy to perform at your restaurant, but my focus is private events. If something comes up, I'll never cancel on you within less than 2 weeks' notice. I tell them. I hope, if something comes up, I don't care what it pays. I won't. If it's less than 2 weeks out and I'm booked here, you've got my word. I'll keep the gig. However, I would hope that they do the same thing. That if they had something come up, oh, or somebody booked the back room tonight, we can't have you anymore, that they wouldn't do that to me as well. So it's kind of a mutual thing. It's never ever been a problem, but
Yeah, that's
yeah.
perfect. And because I just updated training in the first two modules as I'm going through the whole thing. And I specifically talk about this because it can be controversial. People think if you made a commitment, you need to honor your commitment. I agree with that. But here's the difference is what are the terms of the agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the terms of the agreement with the restaurant is that it's flexible when they need it to be. So
Yeah.
if the hometown team makes the playoffs, guess what? You just lost your gig with no notice.
Yeah.
And if that's okay for them to do, then you should be able to have that kind of same thing. And if it's not because they're your customer, then they'll just fire you.
Yeah.
But it's better to have the conversation when these things come up. So you
Yeah.
have this. I love the way you put it. Like private events are my focus, and so this is what I'm doing, and I will, you know, I'll give you enough notice, whatever it is, but you have the conversation in
Yeah.
advance, so it's not.
Here's one restaurant that is really laid back on it. This one particular restaurant is probably the one of, if not the most expensive restaurant in my town. I mean, two people that go there for dinner and not go crazy on food, you're looking at 250, $300 before tip, just to
Yeah,
eat there. And it's a really high end place, but they book a quarter of the year at a time. So it was like last September or so they were wanting to book October, November, December, and I was like, October, November completely booked up for me. I have nothing, absolutely nothing open. And then I took a couple dates with them in December on the caveat that these dates will probably be gone. Um, I
yeah,
I'll book them with you, but I'm going to like to let you know that these dates I cannot promise. How much notice do you need? He said, well, any notice is good notice. And I was like, well, what time frame do you need to lock somebody else in? So he was like, oh, give me at least 2 or 3 days notice. It
that's
was always
perfect.
more than that, but as
Yeah,
long as you have that conversation with whoever is in charge, whether it be the manager or the owner, or if
yeah.
they have an outside booking person, just to kind of lay that foundation of what's expected. And
Yeah, and that's essentially you are creating the terms with that conversation.
mhm.
That's an oral agreement. So, when we have private event clients and we sign a written agreement, well, it says that I'm not looking for better opportunities. If somebody offers me double, I'm contracted to do your gig, and that's I'm sticking to my word. So I think that's like the subtle difference that maybe people that are like very black and white about this issue don't understand. Is like, well, what are the terms? Okay. So if the terms are it's flexible, then it's okay for you to sub out. So this is yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Let's transition into how else you're getting private event work.
So really once things kind of snowballing after COVID, things started opening back up. Really, after I did your course is when things took off. But um, relationships with the right people, meaning other wedding vendors. It's I think when we talked last week, I somebody had once told me about to not view others that do what you do as competition, view them as community, and it's very very true. I think my my largest source of work currently is coming from wedding um, coordinators, bridal wedding planners, things along those lines. Here in Sarasota, there's probably about 12 or 15 known wedding planning services. In that group, there's three that definitely stand out. They've been in business the longest, they have the largest teams, they do the biggest, most extravagant weddings in town. And over the last few years, I've really worked my way into their pockets where if I get an email from them or one of their clients that they're planning their wedding for, the conversation is not so much of what's your cost, it's are you available. And if it's I would say 80% or more of the time, if I'm available, it's locked in, it's booked.
So could
So
you
what
give us some insight on how to do this?
Um,
Um,
yeah, well, so I mean, so occasionally, like I have a wedding coming up in a couple weeks down in Boca Grande with a wedding coordinator that I've never met. I've heard her name before, but I've never had an opportunity to meet her.
mhm.
I don't know if she's not been in business super long or she's new to the area, but I've not met her. So like that first impression is key. Like communication when the coordinator reaches out, try to get back as fast as possible. Is obviously if you've got other things going on at home, but as soon as you can, shoot a message, let them know that you got their message, answer any of the questions they have, and just from the get-go being all around professional, showing up on time when you say you're going to show up, having everything, being dressed in a neatly and nice clothing, like looking presentable, and just that first impression is will go such a long way. um
One less thing for them to worry about.
yeah, if they know that you're on top of your
Mhm.
end of things, that's one less thing for them to worry about. Checking in with them, it's like when first time you get to that gig, if you don't see them, shoot them a text message. Hey,
Communication.
it's Matt. I just got here. I'm good to go. Just wanted to let you know I'm here. If you need anything, I'll be at the ceremony site. things like that. I feel like the planners, they've got so much going on the day of an event. And knowing that you're on top of it is great. And then just from that going forward, if you do a good job, they're going to remember that whole experience from that first email all the
Mhm.
way through the end of your services at that event. And they'll remember that, and shooting them a follow-up after the event saying, hey, it was such a pleasure to meet you. It was so nice to work with you. I can't wait to work with you again. Here's my website. Here's my Instagram. If you know anybody looking for what I do, shoot them my way. And
For the
things like
follow-up.
that, follow up with them after the event is just as important as before the event. Next goes for your clients too. Weddings, I've
Mhm.
had a few wedding clients that have booked me for baby showers a couple years afterwards that they had their firstborn. But for the most part, wedding clients are kind of a one and done for the most part, not always, but corporate clients are. I have
Repeat
so many of them
business.
that book me
Yeah.
multiple times a year, or at least every year. So that follow up prior to following up right after the event, I feel like is just as important with the planners. But so yeah, getting into the planners' pockets, you want them to just know that you're professional and you're going to show up on time and
Yeah.
do a good job, and then they can count on you. I've heard horror stories of other vendors, not always just musicians, but other people that'll just never reply to emails and or phone calls and
Yeah.
show up 20 minutes before they're supposed to start and they're a hot mess and
Yeah.
um,
You're
things like
solving
that.
their, yeah, you're solving a problem.
Yeah,
And, we've been having these conversations, and this is great because it's part of the ascension. Like, advertising yourself on lead platforms is great, but you have to get the gig,
sure.
right? You have to build the relationship. You can't just get a free list of vendors and planners and things and
Yeah.
start spamming them. Like that doesn't work. You even going to some of these networking conferences is it's more about you got to do the gig, right? So do the gig, make a great impression, be professional, solve their problems, and yeah, it's then pretty easy to get on a preferred vendor list,
Exactly.
to become a partner. That's another thing we talk about. Like, what do you do to actively build like partnerships with other vendors where you're referring them and they're referring you? This could be photographers, florists, anything.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I kind of have it's not really a cheat code in it, but so like I said, we started a photo booth business a couple years back,
Yeah. Okay.
2022. Ended 2021. So about a little over 2 years ago. We started the photo booth business, and locally here in Sarasota, there's a group called Swell, which stands for the Suncoast Wedding and Event Leaders. It's essentially a networking group. It's really what it is, but they host an event every month. It's like $450 a year to be a member, but that covers your meal and drinks at each of these events. And you get to meet you get to network with other event professionals from the area. And I'm sure other markets around the country have similar things like that. But
Hmm.
when we started it, I was never forget the first day my wife and I went in there. We went there and we saw these vendors that we knew, and they're like, "Why'd you join Swell? Like everybody knows if you need a violinist to call Matt." And I was like, "Well, because we started a photo booth business. Did you know that?" And they're like, "No, we didn't know that." And it's like, "Okay, well, that's why we joined." But through our photo booth, it's a little bit different than my own music. That's grown such grown such a lot that at the point where we are now, we have like 6 photo booths, we have 6 payroll employees, and we do all types of events. But with that, we've been able to use the photo booth in like ways to give back to the vendors that do things for us. So like there's one wedding planner who has her 10-year company anniversary coming up in June. It's on a Wednesday in June. Like she just knows like don't schedule stuff on Fridays and Saturdays, even in the off season, but it's on a Wednesday in June. And she invited us to go to the event. And it was like, we'd love to go to your event, but to say thank you for everything you've done for us, how would you like a free photo booth at your event? She's like, oh my
Oh,
God, that's
wow.
amazing. So
That's awesome.
it costs us very minimal, but to her, it's a huge way of saying thank you from us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying do that with music. If I were to move to a different, say I was to up and leave everything I have here in Florida and move to a different part of the country, I might consider something like that if I was new to an area and I just kind of wanted to hit the ground running, do the research on finding who that the wedding planning corporation is, or who that big well-known planner is, and reaching out to them, introducing yourself, send some videos, and then kind of get a conversation started. Maybe things will just happen, but I'm not saying I don't know. Let me know what you think on this. But if I was to move to a new area, I might even consider reaching out and offering my services for like something minimal, like a cocktail hour or like a rehearsal dinner or something short and sweet where they can see what I do,
Yeah.
either
Well,
discount it heavily or make
I
them so
can,
basically they would make the planner would be able to offer these services to their client for a much discounted price, which makes them look amazing. If you show up and do a good job, the planner is going to think you're amazing. I don't. It's possible it could work. I don't know.
well, I can think of two examples of recent conversations. So, the first example, uh, Pat Kelly, I talked to him the other day on the phone, and he was telling me about a wedding venue that they perform at regularly. Like they do a ton of weddings at, and it's like twice a year they'll do a free performance for the venue.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a great thing to have that reciprocity. And the event is, I think it's like 12 to 4 p.m.
Okay.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's like not during a busy season. So like they're more than happy to do it. And it's also marketed as a showcase for the venue. Like if you're thinking about, having your wedding, come
Yeah.
check out the venue and get some free drinks and there's free live entertainment and you can hire them. So like it totally makes sense to do stuff like that.
Yeah. For sure.
Completely. And then the other conversation was last week with Marty Nightingale. He moved from Colorado to North Carolina last fall. He made this. He had to finish out his gigs because he does mostly weddings. He had to finish out his gigs in Colorado. When he had everything set up, when he started, he was booked every weekend from October through like beginning of January, just basically like switching over his location on lead platforms.
Yeah.
And then he wound up like doing what you're talking about, like, yes, then meeting some wedding planners, some vendors, and like, yes, doing if you're going to do a showcase for someone that's going to give you a ton of work, like do it. Don't be dumb about that. Like,
Yeah.
or greedy. Like, build that relationship because it's going to work out in the future. And
Yeah.
that's really it was what I'm observing in my own business and with all of our successful members is like to be sustainable, you have to build these relationships. It
Yeah.
has to be more than just advertising because it's like the chair I'm sitting on has four legs, right? So advertising is one, and then you maybe have like your repeat business as two, and your referrals as three, and relationships as four. So whatever it is, it's just um, that's how you scale. And I'm preaching to the choir, this, but just for people that will be watching this and were
Yeah.
listening, like this is I love talking to people like you, Matt, because you've made that ascension and now you're in this different place with your
Yeah.
business because of the relationships that you're making after you're getting hired and doing the gigs.
Yeah. And the thing too with the planners is that like it's one thing when a couple, a bride and groom, reach out to you directly and they're like, "Hey, we just got engaged last week. We're starting our wedding planning. We have booked nothing. We're interested in having what you do at our wedding." That's one thing. But when you get a reach, when a planner reaches out to you or a bride and groom reach out, and they're like, "We hired so and so planning company to do our wedding. They referred you." They've already put their trust in that planner.
Yes.
They've done their research. They found the best planner
Yes.
that matched their personality. Their trust is 100% in that planner and anything he or she says.
Yeah.
So when they reach out to you, they're already like, this planner, my planner thinks this is the perfect fit. It's like the best kind of lead you can get. Like they're not just in your shop looking around. They're at the register with their credit card in hand and they're ready to pay.
And like you said, that price is not the
Yeah,
defining,
it's not for sure.
factor.
Yeah.
They already know like what kind of clientele or what kind of vendors that the wedding planner is working with. So
Yeah.
you're already pre-qualified. That's
Yep.
great.
For sure. So yeah, something I was going to say I can't remember. Knowing the venues too. So my wife and I, with our photo booth thing, we do about every 6 months we do some extensive market research. And the reason we do it is we don't intend to steal or copy people's prices and things like that, but we just want to see where we fit with the other people in the community of what we offer. So we reach out with a Gmail account, an old Gmail address, and get information, pricing sheets, but also with it, occasionally we'll do it with musicians as well. We started a booking agency a year ago. We got licensed and bonded to be a talent agency here locally, and we do it with some musicians as well, just to see what is their follow-up process like. How do they talk to potential clients? And it's amazing how many people just don't respond or don't ever write back, and it's like, what's going on? Like, somebody reached out, they want to hire you. But we also have done we've done market research on the venues in town. I think there's obviously a few like low budget venues that are a couple $1,000, $1,500 to rent for a Saturday night. But there's a couple venues here in town. The Ringling Museum is one of them that's cost $24,000 to rent the space. It includes absolutely nothing but just the space. I mean, it's a beautiful spot, but $24,000 just to have use of the space from 5 to 10 p.m., 5 or 11 p.m. or whatever it is. So, and knowing that information in the back of your head is super important when it comes to a lead coming in. Somebody reaches out, if you get that information that their wedding is at the Ringling Museum, you already know these people aren't trying to get married for less than $30,000 if they're spending $24,000 on the venue. And the same goes for the other end of it. If somebody reaches out and they're at one of the lower end venues, then you have a better idea of what their overall budget might be.
How does that affect your quote process? Do you have more upsells for that kind of thing?
I honestly I'm in the process now of convincing myself to finally change. So since I've done well-paid musician, I went from charging $500 for a ceremony and cocktail hour to $750. Was immediately after I did the course, I bumped it up to $750, and now I'm at $1,500 for a ceremony and cocktail hour. I'm probably going to be bumping that up in the next month or so, next wedding season. Really, I've already got weddings booked into 2025, but not a ton. But for next wedding season, bumping it up. But just knowing that, like, if somebody reaches out and their wedding is at a lower end or a lower budget venue on, say, a Sunday, it might be in wedding season, but it's one of those A dates. It's not necessarily an A+ date. And I know that their wedding is at a lower budget venue and it's like a 2 p.m. wedding on a Sunday. I'm not going to send them my top of the A+ date.
Okay.
That'll give me some room. I might word it in the email. This is my normal rate, but given that your wedding is on a Sunday at 2 p.m., I can take 20% off.
Okay.
So they're feeling like they're getting a deal. You're working with them.
Yeah.
But then the same goes if it's an A+ date in the middle of wedding season and it's the most expensive venue in town, I might add on 20% to it without even saying anything. This is my rate for that date. Just knowing that date's most likely going to get booked.
Well, I like you're basing it on your demand. You're not just like increasing the price because you think there's more money there. It's like, look, this is an A+ date. So,
Yeah, for sure.
So. Awesome. Do you have packages like upsells? Like, could you do a reception?
I usually with the music, I try to take care of the first demand first. So if they're like, we need somebody for our ceremony. Okay, great. This is my rate for ceremony. We get that conversation started. I try not to overload them with too much information on the get-go. It's better I find to get the conversation, the back and forth conversation started first. And then as things, okay, great, we'd love to have you for the ceremony. And then immediately after that would be, have you thought about how you're going to entertain your guests for the cocktail hour? DJs sometimes cover this, but sometimes it's nice to have live music for the cocktail hour. Also, most DJs for reception is just nice background dinner music. The party hasn't really started yet. I can also provide nice dinner music, completely transition style of music and style playing. So it's not a ton of people that do that. A lot of times people have already locked in a great DJ, and I don't want to step on the DJ's toes and take anything away from them, but it's something that's kind of offered as the process builds the client. sometimes they'll reach out and say, we want you for ceremony, cocktail hour, and dinner. Right from the get-go, they already know they want this, and
Yeah.
this. And then that's great. It's less back and forth. But so yeah, really that's for the music. But I've done a couple. So I was flown up to Cincinnati in January. They booked me for the rehearsal dinner the night before, ceremony in a church, cocktail hour, and then 2 hours of their brunch. It was like a brunch wedding on a Sunday.
Wow.
And then for the last hour after that, they just had their own playlist that they played through the speaker that I rented from up there. But that's where the photo booth thing came in. That's why we kind of started it as a way to upsell. I'm already at a wedding. A lot of weddings have photo booths. Hey, you want to add one on? So that's kind of another upsell, I guess, in the
Yeah.
wedding.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just because I don't do weddings, I mean, I used to, but I think that offering different packages,
Yeah.
because what I don't like when I see like last fall, my cousin got married and she's like, what should I spend for a DJ? I'm like, you shouldn't spend any less than 2,500, if you want
Mhm.
somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And look at the package. And it's like, why are they offering like a package that it's just basically made up? It's like the first entry level price point with no subwoofers. Why would you even do that? Why would you bring? Yeah, I don't get like so. I'm when I say packages like this, that makes a lot of sense. Like I like how you do it in um like a conversational way, but you build like step by step process. It's not like, hey, here's all the stuff you could buy. It's like, okay, well, you asked me to do the ceremony. And then as you talk, do you need me to do the cocktail hour? Do you need, I could do that stuff. I also have a photo booth company. Like those are logical upsells and
Yeah.
make sense instead of like, well, if you pay me more money, I'll bring one subwoofer. If you pay me even more, I'll bring two subwoofers. Like, what?
Yeah. I had heard somebody that I had heard at some seminar we went to was saying to use the wording of "have you thought about," and it kind of helps instill this problem to the client that they didn't realize they had. So, like for wedding ceremonies, have you thought about how your guests are going to hear your vows? If that's something you would like them to be able to hear, I can provide a wireless microphone for you and your fiance. And for
Perfect.
the
Because they're going to go, no, I didn't think about
I didn't think about that.
that.
Our wedding's on the beach and
Yeah.
it's windy, and how are they going to hear us? So,
Yeah.
kind of putting that thought in their head that enacts that problem that they didn't know that they had, and you're right there ready to help them solve that problem.
While we're on topic of weddings, do you do phone calls before you get hired? Like kind of like an interview.
Very rarely.
Okay.
I try to I actually I so whatever way I have my preferred way of communicating with clients, and that's email.
Yep, me
Hands
too.
down, email is my favorite. It's the best way to communicate. But I try to match whatever the client initially, at least from the beginning. If the client calls me, I'm going to call them back. If they text me, I'll text them back. If they
Okay.
direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, I'll message them back on that. I'm not going to say, if they call me and leave a voicemail, I'm not going to text them back and say, "Hey, check your email. I got your voicemail. I'll send you info." So I find that however the client reached out to me, that's their preferred way of communicating. So
Okay.
at least from the get go, getting the conversation started that way. If it is a phone call, well, I'll give all the information. My thing is that I talk to so many clients that I forget little details if I don't have a pen and paper right there with me. If I'm in the car driving and somebody's like, "Oh, we're at this venue and
Right.
we're switching over to this other venue for the reception," it's like if I had it all on an email, I can pull it
Yeah.
all back up. It's all right there. It's easy to remember.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is because it seems that wedding clients need to be in more communication because every
Yeah,
situation is unique and they want to get on the phone. And I don't like to speak to people on the phone until I've gotten a deposit because I just feel like
yeah,
that's not a good use of my time.
for sure.
And some of us, who are doing weddings are fine with that. They'll take a phone call with who is ever interested in, having a serious conversation about hiring them. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I was getting at. Like, do you
Yeah,
have a
I don't, it doesn't happen often,
okay.
but it does occasionally. I would say it's more often than not the mother of the bride that reaches out
Okay.
to me and wants to just tell me the story about her daughter and
Yeah.
things I did. Like, okay, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it happens occasionally, but I try to avoid lengthy conversations with too much detail. If I do call them back or we do have a phone call, I'll give them some basic information, and then I'll say, give me the best email address for you. I'll get all the information over to you.
Cool.
That's another thing at restaurants too. It happens more than I'd like, is that people come up and they're like, "You're amazing. We were getting married next year. We'd love to have you for our wedding. How much do you charge?"
Yeah.
Conversation I don't love having with people, especially from a restaurant, even if it's a high end restaurant, because I think sometimes the price tag on it can come as a shock to some people, and I'd rather them have that privacy to have that face that they make without me staring at them. So, um,
So how do you handle it?
I say I don't know. I say there's a lot that goes into pricing your wedding. I try to like make it
Yeah.
give them a better reason. There's a lot that goes into pricing your wedding. It depends on the time of year, the time of day. Is it on the
Yeah.
beach? Is it in the backyard? There's a
Yeah.
lot of different variables that go into it. When it really
Yeah.
comes down to the overall price, my prices are all pretty close to the same. But it's a way of just saying, I would love to get all the correct information over to you. I don't want
Yeah.
to give you a price that's going to scare you away
Yeah.
before knowing all the details. Here's my card. Call, text, email, whatever works best for you, and then I'll get all the information over to you. Sometimes people keep just pushing and pushing. I had a bride come up to me back about 6 months ago at another restaurant, and she just wouldn't walk away without getting a number. She had to have the number, and hers was like an off season wedding. I think it was on a might have been a Sunday. And I told her what my rate was,
Yeah.
$1,500 for ceremony and cocktail hour. And I was like, given that you're on a Sunday, I can have a little flexibility with that, but would have to get all the details. And she just looked at me and she's like, there's doctors and lawyers that don't make that much per hour. And then I took a breath and I was like, you understand you're not paying me for my time at your wedding. You're paying me for the 33 years it took me to get to this point where I can provide a high level of entertainment at your wedding.
Exactly. Sounds
So
like
and then she was just like, she couldn't understand why the price was so high. And then I was like, you know what? I wish you all the best in planning your perfect wedding.
yeah.
We're not going to work out, and that's
Yeah.
okay. I'm not the right violinist for your wedding, and that's totally fine. I don't take any offense to it. But I wish you all the best. And that's the thing. It's with the mindset shift, is just understanding and that it's okay that you're too expensive for some people.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
Yes.
Um, my wife and I now with our business, we're doing great. We're making better money than we've ever made in our life. We're still not the kind of people that would spend $1,000 to have a musician come to our house for a party. I mean, maybe one day we'll get to that point, but where we live here in Sarasota, there's a lot of people that have that kind of money. That we have people that drop $1,000 on a photo booth for their 16-year-old for their birthday
Yeah.
party, and it's like it's
Well,
okay
and
that the prices don't fit in everybody's budget.
right. And also it is value over buying power, right? Because if you really value it, and it like a wedding, is supposed to be for a lot of people, it's a once in a lifetime experience. And if
Yeah.
it's really important to you, you'll find a way to make it work. Like
Mhm.
you'll find a way to afford it.
Yeah.
Versus people with a lot of money who don't value live music, they're not going to spend the money on it. So, I think I talked about this last week, but I've got examples on both ends of the spectrum where people I thought couldn't afford me, paid me and tipped me, and other people, who clearly could have afforded more and negotiated my rates down. So it's about value over buying power, and so yeah, what someone can afford, it also depends on what is important to them because, you can drive by a house that's, 1,200 square foot that has a Tesla outside, you know,
Yeah.
that's just what they value. It doesn't,
No, for sure.
so.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. We're getting close to about an hour here, and I really appreciate you taking the time. The
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
that's so cool is that like I haven't before we talked on the phone last week, I didn't ever really connect with you. And you'd been, here since 2021. One of the really cool things I wanted to mention to people was that fall of 2021, we both happened to be out
Oh
in the
yeah,
San Francisco Bay Area for gigs at the same time.
yeah.
And I think it was like maybe I saw you on Facebook or something talking
I,
about
I
it.
one of us I saw you must have one of us posted something and it got the conversation started of
Yeah. So we were trying to meet up for a drink that didn't happen, but it was a pretty cool thing to like, hey,
yeah,
we're both on the opposite end of the country doing this
yeah.
thing.
That was the first of a few. Since then, it was the first out of state wedding I did. Since then, I've been to Maine, upstate New York, Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati, Ohio for weddings, all from people that met me at restaurants. So it's
It's
like,
crazy.
um, and those restaurants are a couple of the ones that I still play at. And these are the kind of people that have summer home or winter homes down here in Florida that have the kind of money to have two multi-million-dollar homes, and they have
Yeah.
kids that get married and they're like, hey, we love you, love hearing you play. Like
Yeah.
it's always been the, except for the San Francisco one, it's always been the parents of either the bride and the groom that hired me. The San
Yeah.
Francisco one, I was closing out my gig with a song "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen, and it was at a hotel, and I heard a woman just screaming, oh my god, he's playing my song, and she ran up with her phone and started taking a video of me, and that was the end of my gig that night. And they sat down. They're like, "Oh my god, why are you done?" And I was like, "I've been here since 6." And I think they talked me into playing one more song, and I played one more
Yeah.
song. They're like, "We're getting married in San Francisco. Can we get you out there to play?" I was like, "Absolutely." So it was a lot of fun. Travel. I would like to do more traveling for work, other states and stuff like that. But having two kids, it's a little complicated with
Yeah.
travels,
It
but
totally is. Totally is.
getting away. So
Um, cool. So well, I haven't really been asking you like a formal interview set of questions, but I do like to squeeze in like two questions at the
yeah.
end. And you pretty much have answered this, but how is your mindset about getting paid a premium? How's that changed since you joined the program?
Um, so I would say kind of like I just always think of like the 10,000 hour, as my wife likes to call it, the 10,000 hour rule. It's like I've put in the time to get to the point, to the level of where I'm at. And knowing that, like I said, it's not my prices and what my services aren't for every client. It's not going to work with everyone, but those aren't the ones that I'm trying to target and trying to work for. And just knowing that they're not paying for the time that I'm there, and that's okay. Like, don't think of it as, oh, cool, I'm making $1,500 for a 3 hour gig. No, I'm making $1,500 because I've spent hours of my life dedicated to my craft and
Yep.
countless hours marketing myself and working behind the scenes. People don't see the behind the scenes stuff. That even they're like, oh man, it's gonna be so cool to be a musician. You just get to go out and play, and yeah, that's the fun part that we all love so much about it. But it's the behind the scenes work,
Yeah.
the practicing, the all the emails and
That
contracts.
college education.
Yeah. So just the mindset of knowing like, okay, I'm charging what I'm charging, not because of the time I'm at this event. It's because of all the work I've done to get here and that I continue to do. And just feeling comfortable with it and being comfortable with taking no as an okay answer.
Hmm.
Fine. It's not going to work for you. Okay. I
Yeah.
wish you all the best. Um, and that's totally fine. Just yeah, just
Yeah.
knowing that those clients are out there. And the more, I feel like the more higher end events you do, the more you're going to get, because there's people, you're not playing a party for one person, you're playing a party for a group of friends. And a lot of times, if it's a high end client, they're going to have a lot of high end friends that have money that also throw parties.
Yep.
And they're
Totally.
like, oh, Jim and Kathy booked you at their party.
Hmm.
You must not be too expensive. And you tell them your rate, and they're like, oh, well, they paid him for 3 hours. Okay,
Exactly.
we don't want to look like we don't have money.
I say that. I say that a lot to people because like members of our community because it's a great way to do it. Like I remember last year having that conversation with like the couple that hired me. They were actually like, "These are our friends," and then when they introduced me and they walked, their friends walked away. They're like, "They're rich." So it's like, well, you're paying me a really good rate. I'm sure, you guys are kind of like comparable in income.
Yeah.
So like whatever, when I quoted them, they were like, yeah, no problem. And tipped me after I was done, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So So yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing I remember from your course when I did it was that you were it's something that it was like it really boosted my desire to want to put everything to work was that you receive tips more than you would get tips from private parties larger than restaurants would pay you for a 4 hour gig at.
Yes.
And that's totally true. I've had countless tips from private events,
Yes.
cash tips at that are just
Yes.
larger, much larger than some of the original restaurant gigs that I was doing.
Yes.
And it just feels good that people not only will pay the rates that you're the premium rates that I'm charging, but also have the kindness to want to give you even more and then call you back for another event. Hey, we're going to
Yes.
call you for our party next year too. We might have another one 6 months from now. And it's getting into that circle of people and knowing those people. And the more I feel like it really just snowballs, the more of them that you do, the more people are going to hear you. And they just know that, oh, you've done this event for this corporation and this gala event for this big company and this person's private party. Oh, I saw that guy. I saw Matt at all three of those. He must be great. He might great to work with. His prices are right in line with them. It makes sense for them to.
Yep. Builds your authority and your trust. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, awesome. So last question is, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone making that transition out of the low paying venue
Like
scene?
currently still in the low.
Yeah.
I would say treat the restaurant gigs, like I said before, treat them as a paid marketing. You're getting paid to showcase yourself, pick the right venues to play at, know how to have business, treat every moment as a marketing opportunity, whether you're at a gig or you're at the grocery store, have cards on you. I recently purchased a new vehicle, but my previous vehicle had an SRQ violinist sticker on the back of it. And people would see me in
Oh,
the
here, show
grocery
your.
store parking lot. Oh yeah, little logo here. They'd see me in the parking lot and they're like, do you teach? Are you a violinist? I'm like, oh no, I'm a violinist. And like, I said you do weddings on there. I'm like, yeah, here's my card. So every moment is just like um, treating it as marketing. And when you bump into people, having a card handy, being able to talk about what you do, you never know when that next client is going to be there, is going to come to you and you're going to have an opportunity to meet them. And then also don't be afraid to say no to a restaurant. Have that conversation with the venue, whoever does the bookings, whether it's the manager or a booking company or the owner. Let them know that you love performing at their venue, but your focus in your career is to do private events, and giving them every Friday and Saturday night for the rest of your life is not going to open that door for you.
Right.
And finding out what it will take to have an agreement. I mean, I've worked at restaurants for a lot of my life, mainly as a server and bartender. And I guess I still kind of work for restaurants in a way as a subcontractor, but
Yeah.
a lot of restaurants treat their employees and their managers as numbers. They're replaceable. And you might be the best musician that restaurant has ever had, or and that might be the case. But if you were to move away, if you were to lose a finger or something, couldn't play your music anymore, they'll find somebody to replace it. So my wife and I, like I said, we started a booking agency a year ago, and there's a fantastic guitarist here locally that I've seen perform numerous times, and we've had at least two or three different occasions where we had a client looking for somebody that does exactly what he does, and we've not booked him. Most of them have been a couple months in advance, and he's not willing to cancel his Saturday night gig to take the event. So he's like, if you have anything come up on Sunday, Monday, what do you say, like Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and every third Friday, something like that, I can do it. I'm like, so Saturdays are out. He's like, no, I have a steady gig on Saturdays. And it's like,
Right.
he's never going to get out of that
No.
comfort zone of,
Right.
and he's super talented. He's got a great voice. He's a solo guitarist, and he does whole looping, which is the whole guitar, and it's really really good, really refined. But it's unfortunate. It's like, hey, we can get you. You can make
Yeah.
as much from this one gig as you'll make playing at that restaurant all month. But
Hmm. Yeah.
um, it's terrifying. I remember, and it's to rewind to right when I finished the program. I think it took me about 3 weeks to do the well-paid musician course. I had a lot of stuff already kind of set up, website and different marketing platforms to Knot and Wedding Wire. I had a lot of those set up. I just had to tweak some things. But as soon as I finished the course, the very first client that I had to reach out to me was a client that I have done dozens of events for over the years. And at the time, I was charging $200 for the first hour of my work for services, and then $100 per additional hour. So you're looking at a 3 hour gig at $400. But they were always booking me for 1 hour events. It was the Chamber of Commerce here in Sarasota. They were the first client to reach out to me after finishing the Well Paid Musician Club. And I've done at this time probably 10 or more events for them for 1 hour for $200. And I was like, I'm going to lose this client forever if I quote them $500. And my wife's like, you got to do it. You got to tell them that you're reshaping yourself. I forget how we worded it, but it took me like a day or two to figure out what to say. And I wrote back and I said, thanks so much for reaching out to me again. My business has been growing, which is amazing. I do currently have a 2 hour minimum, but that'll get a $500 minimum, but that'll get you up 2 hours worth of music. And they wrote back, unfortunately, we only need you for an hour. However, we have $400 in the budget for it. So just by saying that to them, I went from a client that was paying me $200 for 1 hour to now paying me $400 for the same amount of time. And I've done numerous events for them since at my current rate. They've bumped up their budget allowance, I guess, since then. But I was terrified to tell them, because this was a relationship I had already built with the client. And I was like, I'm going to charge them $300 more for the same amount of music that they've always gotten from me. They're going to say, screw you, see you later. Instead, they didn't quite meet me at the $500 minimum, but they doubled the amount of money they were paying me. And so that's kind of when it realized to me how much money I'd been leaving on the table over the years, underquoting, underselling myself. And
what do you think gave you the confidence to do that?
Just my wife was a big proponent in it. Okay. Just do it, Matt. She kind of, I don't know. I guess I was okay I finally got to the point where I was okay if I lost the client, because I was going to reshape if the relationship I had created with them was not strong enough for them to have any sort of wiggle room in it. I was okay with that, I guess. They've been great even since then. We do at least 2 or 3 events for them a year, which is a combination of both her music and photo booth services, and they've been great. And so I guess that was it. I was just like, you know what, I'm going to take this step, do something that I'm not, go outside that comfort zone, and just kind of see what happens. And it worked out. So
and I guess knowing that being where you were at the time, doing the same thing wasn't going to get you where you wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had a very similar experience in 2016 when my wife got pregnant with our first, and I was like, I'm not doing bars anymore. And I went to all the bars and told them my new minimum fee, thinking they would all fire me. And all of them, 4 of them, kept me on at my new rate. I was like, okay. Like, I just had nothing to lose because I was quitting anyway. But it's like, if you're going to pay me that, then sure, I'll stay. So that was my thing. It was a little different, but having a reason why, like a strong enough motivation, and it sounded like you have a great support system with your wife, and the fact that she's partnered with you on this new business with the photo booth and things like that is a really great. So whatever it is for people, to find that motivation, find that that why that we talk about is really great. So
just knowing that you can create it from like, you could start from scratch and create the business. That's where I was like, if I'm going to lose this client, I'll make a new one at some point. Make that same relationship at some point.
Exactly.
So
that's awesome. So Matt Dendy, starting out in the local orchestra, bartending, to shifting to performing at bars, to now so much work that he started a talent agency and a photo booth company with his wife. Such a great transition, such a great arc, such a great story. So yeah, man, that's really it's really awesome to see. And
thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time today to answer my questions.
Yeah, thanks
And
for asking me to come on. And yeah, no, it really, I've had other people from the group reach out to me and people in the Florida area and just kind of get some ideas. And it's like it really your course and what you teach in your course 100% works. It really does. But it's just watching the videos and it's not just watching your videos and doing the little tasks, setting up your website and not what all those little things are just little pieces of the puzzle.
right.
And once the puzzle's complete, like you have to do that final touches and actually make that shift in your mindset to put all of that to work. It's one thing to build it, but it's like you got to turn that switch on and make it actually work.
Yep.
So I thank you for what you do and what you've created here.
Yeah, absolutely. It started out, the idea was just kind of like a training course, but it's become more of a community. And that's what I love about it. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And then just seeing what people accomplish is like, that's what keeps me going in this business. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's an awesome
So
thing.
one little quick story. So yesterday, actually, I went to Tampa to one of my professors from when I was at USF is retiring, and he had his final concert yesterday at the school, and then they had a little reception afterwards. So I got invited to go. I went up there and I saw my old violin professor. It was great to catch up with her and see her and stuff. And she asked about my kids, and I told her that my 10-year-old daughter is playing ukulele and singing, and they both play piano. And I told her that my daughter came out to my gig recently, and she brought her ukulele and sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow and played ukulele, and she had her own tip jar and she made like $82 in tips on the one song.
Wow.
Everybody loved her. And we told her, like, when you turn 15, Grace, like, you got to get a job. I don't care if it's at the grocery store or where it is, but you could make a lot of money with music. And if you keep practicing and you learn some songs and you really concentrate on it, like, you can actually make some good money. And we could see the sparkle in my daughter's eye. But anyway, I was telling my professor that, and she was like, "Oh, that's so cute." She's like, "The only problem is you're instilling this idea in her that there's money in music." And I was like, as much as I wanted to just like tell her everything about what's going on and how like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just that's a mindset, and like you can shift
Yeah.
that. There was a lot of people at this event. It was a retirement celebration, so I didn't want to like get into like, well, actually, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like that's where I was too. Is like, unless you get into a really big orchestra and you teach full time, like it's hard to be successful in music. But it's just having the right mindset and knowing what to do and how to apply it that is the key.
Yeah. You said it. I love it. Yeah, if that would be my elevator pitch, it would just be your mindset. You could do all these other things, like, but if you're like looking at things through a lens of scarcity, or the fact that like doing what you love and making money are mutually exclusive, then I I can't help you. No one
Yeah.
can, you know.
Mhm.
So awesome, man. Well, I
Yeah.
really
Thanks.
appreciate you doing this, and
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to come see you play sometime. Like I was talking before we went live, I have a uncle who lives nearby, Matt. So
Yeah.
next time I come down to
Anytime.
visit, I'll have
For
to
sure.
check out your Monday or Wednesday night gig.
It's hot here in the summer. I guess that's a lot of places too.
Yeah.
The Wednesday one, they started it last year. It's on the really nice beach resort, but it was like 115-degree heat index. I was like, I don't know how much longer this is gonna. I don't think I'm gonna do
Yeah.
it this summer. I might make it through May and then reconsider.
Take off. Yeah.
I don't take air conditioned gigs for granted anymore. It's like I
Yeah.
can be inside. It's the way to go. All right. Well, thanks
Awesome,
so much.
man.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Have a
Thanks so
great
much,
day.
bud. All right. Take care.